Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribers. At 2,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. The Starship Lumina docked at Earth's orbital station with a soft hum, its sleek silver hull gleaming against the backdrop of the aging human spaceport. The vessel, a marvel of Xyrian engineering, had traversed light years to bring its passengers to this distant planet. The alien students, distinguished by their elongated limbs, large expressive eyes and smooth pale skin, disembarked with a mix of excitement and curiosity. Among them was Vala, a bright and inquisitive student whose striking blue eyes seemed to absorb every detail around her. Professor Zalara, the group's leader and a renowned expert in galactic anthropology, guided the students through the station. Her presence was both commanding and reassuring, her own eyes filled with the same curiosity that drove her students. This journey to Earth was a significant part of their education, designed to immerse them in human culture and history. The focus of their study was particularly intriguing: the history of human combat, a subject that held a peculiar fascination for the peaceful Xyrians. As the group descended to the planet's surface, they were greeted by a panorama of Earth's diverse landscapes. From the lush greenery of forest to the sprawling urban centers, the contrast was striking. The students, clad in simple yet elegant uniforms that accentuated their slender forms, marveled at the sights. They had read about Earth in their studies, but seeing it firsthand was an entirely different experience. Their transport, a sleek hovercraft provided by their human hosts, whisked them away to their first destination, Washington, D.C. The city, steeped in history and culture, was to be their base for the study of human warfare. As they approached the Global Military History Museum, Vala couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. This was where they would begin to unravel the complexities of human conflict. The museum itself was an imposing structure, a blend of classical and modern architecture, symbolizing the long and tumultuous history of human warfare. Inside, the students were greeted by Dr. Hawkins, a seasoned historian with a passion for military history. His welcoming smile and warm demeanor put the students at ease as he began their tour. The museum's vast halls were filled with relics from various eras, each exhibit a testament to humanity's capacity for both destruction and ingenuity. Vala found herself drawn to an ancient suit of armor, its metal plates worn and scarred from battles long past. Professor Zalara began to explain the evolution of human warfare, detailing how early humans had moved from simple clubs and spears to complex machinery and advanced technology. The students listened intently, their large eyes reflecting the flickering lights of the displays. They were particularly intrigued by the strategic aspects of warfare. The idea that humans would spend so much effort and intellect on developing tactics and strategies for combat was both fascinating and alien to them. Vala, ever the curious one, raised a question about the motivations behind these wars. Dr. Hawkins explained the complex interplay of politics, resources, and ideologies that often led to conflict, painting a picture of a species driven by both noble and destructive impulses. As they moved through the exhibits, the students learned about the various factors that had influenced human warfare over the centuries. They saw weapons from different eras, from swords and bows to firearms and tanks. Each item told a story, not just of violence, but of the societies that had created and used them. The Xyrians, who had never experienced war on their home planet, found these stories both disturbing and compelling. Their tour concluded with a visit to the museum's war simulation room. Here, the students could experience virtual recreations of famous battles throughout history. Dr. Hawkins, with a knowing look, suggested they start with the Battle of Gettysburg. Vala hesitated, her heart racing with a mix of fear and excitement, but the encouragement of her peers and the guiding hand of Professor Zalara gave her the courage to step into the simulation. Suddenly, they were transported to a different time and place. The peaceful museum was replaced by the chaos of battle. Gunfire rang out, smoke filled the air, and the ground shook with the thunder of cannons. Vala found herself in the midst of it all, her senses overwhelmed by the intensity of the simulation. She could see soldiers fighting desperately, hear their cries, and even smell the acrid scent of gunpowder. The simulation ended abruptly, leaving the students in stunned silence. The transition back to the calm museum was jarring. Professor Zilara took the moment to discuss the emotional and psychological impacts of war, emphasizing the resilience of the human spirit in the face of such adversity. The students, still processing what they had experienced, listened with a newfound respect for the complexities of human nature. As they left the museum, Vala couldn't help but reflect on the day's events. She had come to Earth eager to learn, but now she realized that understanding human history, especially its darker aspects, was far more challenging than she had anticipated. The journey had just begun, and she knew there were many more lessons to learn and emotions to navigate. With Professor Zilara and her fellow students by her side, Vala felt ready to face the challenges ahead, eager to uncover the deeper truths about humanity. The following day, the Syrian students returned to the Global Military History Museum, their anticipation palpable. The imposing structure seemed even grander in the morning light, casting long shadows that hinted at the weight of the history contained within. As they entered, the familiar figure of Dr. Hawkins greeted them, ready to delve deeper into the complex tapestry of human combat. Their first stop was a hall dedicated to ancient warfare. Massive stone reliefs and intricate carvings depicted scenes of battles from millennia past. The students were drawn to a towering statue of a warrior king, his face etched with determination and resolve. Dr. Hawkins explained the significance of the figure, detailing the conquests and strategies that had defined his reign. The students were fascinated by the idea that individuals could shape the course of history through sheer force of will and tactical genius. Vala found herself particularly captivated by a section devoted to the Roman Empire. The gleaming armor and meticulously crafted weapons spoke of a civilization that had mastered the art of war. Dr. Hawkins described the discipline and organization of the Roman legions, their formations and strategies that had allowed them to conquer vast territories. Vala's mind raced with questions about the logistics and ethics of such conquests, her curiosity ever insatiable. Moving on, the group entered a dimly lit room filled with artifacts from the medieval period. Suits of armor stood like silent sentinels, their surfaces reflecting the soft glow of strategically placed lights. Dr. Hawkins explained the evolution of armor and weaponry, from the chainmail of early knights to the plate armor that became synonymous with medieval chivalry. The students were intrigued by the duality of these items. They were both protective and aggressive, designed to safeguard the wearer while inflicting harm on others. A particularly striking exhibit caught Vala's eye, a large ornate sword that had once belonged to a famous knight. The blade, though dulled by time, still exuded an aura of power and nobility. Dr. Hawkins recounted the knight's exploits, emphasizing the codes of honor and chivalry that had governed such warriors. The Syrian students, whose society valued peace and diplomacy, found this concept both foreign and fascinating. They engaged in a lively discussion about the moral implications of such a code, contrasting it with their own values. The tour then led them to a vast hall dedicated to modern warfare. Here the relics were starkly different, sleek, deadly machines designed for efficiency and devastation. Tanks, planes, and missiles loomed over the students, a sobering reminder of the technological advancements that had transformed the nature of war. Dr. Hawkins spoke of the world wars, their causes, and the staggering human cost. The students were particularly struck by the sheer scale of these conflicts, struggling to comprehend the millions of lives affected. Vala lingered by an exhibit showcasing the Enigma machine, a device used for encryption during World War II. Dr. Hawkins explained its significance in the realm of intelligence and espionage, detailing how breaking the Enigma code had been pivotal in the Allies' victory. The idea that wars could be won not just on the battlefield, but through intellect and cunning fascinated Vala. It added a new layer to her understanding of human conflict, highlighting the importance of information and strategy. As the tour progressed, the students encountered exhibits on the Cold War, exploring the tense standoff between superpowers and the ever-present threat of nuclear annihilation. The museum's interactive displays allowed them to engage with the material, deepening their understanding of the geopolitical landscape of the 20th century. The Syrians, who had never faced such existential threats, found the concept of mutually assured destruction both terrifying and perplexing. Their final stop was a memorial hall dedicated to the memory of those who had perished in wars throughout history. The somber atmosphere was a stark contrast to the rest of the museum, with soft music playing in the background and walls lined with photographs and names. Dr. Hawkins led them through the hall, speaking softly about the human cost of conflict and the importance of remembering those who had sacrificed their lives. The students, moved by the poignant tribute, reflected on the lessons they had learned. As they left the museum, Vala felt a profound sense of respect for the resilience and complexity of humanity. The day's experiences had deepened her understanding of the multifaceted nature of human warfare, from the strategic brilliance of ancient generals to the moral dilemmas faced by modern soldiers. She realized that their study was not just about learning history, but about understanding the very essence of what it meant to be human. Walking back to their quarters, the students engaged in animated discussions, their minds buzzing with new insights and questions. Vala, though still processing everything she had seen, felt a growing sense of purpose. She knew that their journey had only just begun, and that there was much more to discover about this enigmatic species called humans. With each step, she felt closer to unraveling the complexities of human nature, determined to uncover the deeper truths that lay beneath the surface. The Xyrian students arrived at the war simulation room with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The high-tech facility, nestled within the Global Military History Museum, promised a visceral experience of historical battles. The room itself was sleek and futuristic, with advanced holographic projectors lining the walls. Dr. Hawkins, their ever-enthusiastic guide, stood by the control panel, ready to introduce them to this immersive technology. The students gathered around, their large, expressive eyes reflecting the soft glow of the equipment. Vala stood at the front, her curiosity tinged with a hint of trepidation. She had always been fascinated by human history, but the prospect of experiencing it firsthand was both thrilling and daunting. Dr. Hawkins began with an overview of the simulation's capabilities. "This room allows us to recreate any battle from history with remarkable accuracy," he explained. "You will see, hear, and even feel the environment as if you were there. Today, we'll start with one of the most pivotal battles in human history, the Battle of Gettysburg." With a few taps on the control panel, the room transformed. The walls dissolved into a panoramic view of the rolling hills and fields of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The air grew heavy with the scent of gunpowder and the distant rumble of artillery. The students found themselves standing on a battlefield, surrounded by soldiers in blue and grey uniforms. The realism was astounding, each detail meticulously rendered. Vala's heart pounded in her chest as the simulation began. She could hear the shouts of officers, the clashing of weapons, and the cries of the wounded. Smoke hung thick in the air, obscuring the sun and creating an eerie, dreamlike atmosphere. The intensity of the scene was overwhelming, a stark contrast to the peaceful life she knew on Xyria. The students moved cautiously through the battlefield, guided by Dr. Hawkins's narration. He described the strategic importance of Gettysburg, the movements of the Union and Confederate armies, and the key moments that had turned the tide of the battle. Vala listened intently, her mind racing to keep up with the flood of information. As they walked, Vala noticed a group of soldiers huddled behind a low stone wall. Their faces were etched with determination and fear, their bodies tense with anticipation. She could almost feel their anxiety, their desperate hope for victory. One soldier caught her eye, a young man with a dirty, sweat-streaked face and eyes that seemed far older than his years. He clutched his rifle tightly, his knuckles white with strain. The scene shifted abruptly, and Vala found herself in the midst of a fierce skirmish. Bullets whizzed past her, and the deafening roar of cannon fire filled the air. She watched in horror as soldiers fell around her, their bodies crumpling to the ground. The simulation was so realistic that she could feel the ground shake with each explosion, the heat of the blasts searing her skin. Despite the chaos, Vala forced herself to focus on the details. She observed the tactics used by both sides, the way they maneuvered and adapted to the changing conditions. She marveled at the bravery and resilience of the soldiers, their willingness to fight and die for their cause. The experience was both harrowing and enlightening, giving her a deeper understanding of the complexities of human warfare. The simulation ended as abruptly as it had begun, the battlefield dissolving into the sterile walls of the war simulation room. The students stood in stunned silence, their faces pale and drawn. Vala's heart was still racing, her mind reeling from the intensity of the experience. She could see the same mix of emotions reflected in her peers' faces: shock, awe, and a newfound respect for the human capacity for both destruction and courage. Dr. Hawkins allowed them a moment to collect themselves before speaking. "I know that was intense," he said gently, "but it's important to understand the realities of war, not just the strategies and tactics. War is brutal and tragic, but it's also a testament to human resilience and determination." Professor Zilara stepped forward, her calm presence a balm to the students' frayed nerves. "This experience is a crucial part of your education," she said. "It's not enough to study war from a distance. To truly understand it, you must see it through the eyes of those who lived it. Remember what you felt today. The fear, the courage, the chaos. These are the human elements of war, and they are just as important as the historical facts." The students nodded, their expressions somber. They had come to Earth to learn, but they hadn't anticipated the emotional toll of their studies. Vala, however, felt a sense of purpose solidifying within her. The simulation had been a harsh lesson, but it had also ignited a burning desire to understand more, to uncover the deeper truths behind the battles and the people who fought them. As they exited the war simulation room, the students engaged in quiet, thoughtful discussions. They shared their impressions, their fears, and their newfound insights. Vala found herself at the center of these conversations, her keen observations and thoughtful questions driving the discussion forward. She realized that this experience had not only expanded her knowledge, but had also strengthened the bond between her and her peers. Returning to their quarters that evening, Vala reflected on the day's events. The simulation had been a powerful reminder of the stark realities of war, but it had also deepened her appreciation for the complexity and resilience of humanity. She knew that their journey was far from over, and there were many more lessons to be learned. With a renewed sense of determination, she resolved to continue exploring the rich tapestry of human history, seeking to understand both its light and its shadows. The next phase of their journey brought the Zyrian students to a veterans rehabilitation center on the outskirts of the city. The center, a sprawling complex of modern buildings surrounded by tranquil gardens, provided a stark contrast to the chaos and intensity they had experienced in the war simulation room. Here, they would meet individuals who had lived through the realities of war, gaining first-hand insights into its enduring impacts. As they entered the facility, the students were greeted by a warm and welcoming atmosphere. The walls were adorned with photographs and memorabilia, telling stories of bravery, sacrifice, and resilience. The veterans themselves, a diverse group of men and women of varying ages, gathered to share their experiences. Among them was Jake, a young soldier who had lost his leg in a recent conflict. His story would become a focal point of the day's lessons. Dr. Hawkins, ever the diligent guide, introduced the students to the veterans. He emphasized the importance of listening and learning from those who had faced the harsh realities of combat. "These individuals have endured experiences that go beyond the pages of history books," he said. "Their stories are invaluable to your understanding of human conflict." The first session was a group discussion where the veterans spoke about their experiences. They described the camaraderie that developed among soldiers, the bonds forged in the heat of battle. They also spoke of the physical and emotional scars they carried, the challenges of adjusting to civilian life, and the support systems that helped them cope. Vala listened intently, her large blue eyes reflecting empathy and curiosity. She was particularly moved by Jake's account. He spoke candidly about the day he was injured, describing the fear and chaos, but also the heroism of his comrades who had risked their lives to save him. His journey of recovery, marked by pain, determination, and a relentless spirit, resonated deeply with her. During a break, Vala approached Jake, her curiosity piqued by his resilience. "How did you find the strength to keep going?" she asked, her voice tinged with admiration. Jake smiled, his eyes betraying a mix of pain and pride. "It's not about strength," he said. "It's about finding a reason to keep going. For me, it was my friends, my family, and the desire to help others who were going through the same thing. Vala nodded, absorbing his words. The concept of finding purpose in the face of adversity was something she would carry with her. She realized that understanding the human spirit was as crucial as understanding the mechanics of war. The afternoon was spent in smaller, more intimate sessions. The students were divided into groups, each paired with a veteran who shared more personal stories and insights. Vala's group included Jake, along with 2 other veterans, a woman named Maria who had served as a medic, and an older man named Tom who had fought in a conflict several decades ago. Maria's stories were harrowing, yet inspiring. She spoke of the lives she had saved, the bonds formed with those she treated, and the heart-wrenching losses. Her perspective as a medic provided a different angle on the war, focusing on the efforts to preserve life amidst destruction. Tom, on the other hand, shared stories of tactical operations and the psychological toll of prolonged conflict. His wisdom and experience offered a long-term view of the effects of war. As they spoke, the students asked thoughtful questions, probing deeper into the veterans' experiences. They discussed the ethics of warfare, the psychological impacts, and the ways in which society could better support those who served. The veterans, in turn, expressed their appreciation for the students' genuine interest and empathy. By the end of the day, the students had formed connections with the veterans that transcended their initial curiosity. They had learned about the personal sacrifices made by those who served and gained a profound respect for their resilience and courage. The experience had humanized the concept of war, transforming it from abstract history to lived reality. Before leaving, the students gathered for a final reflection session. Professor Zellara praised their engagement and encouraged them to continue exploring these themes in their studies. "You have seen the human side of war," she said. "Remember these stories as you delve deeper into your research. They are a reminder of the strength and complexity of the human spirit." Vala, reflecting on the day's events, felt a deep sense of gratitude and inspiration. She had witnessed firsthand the impact of war on individuals, not just as soldiers, but as human beings with families, hopes, and dreams. The lessons she had learned from Jake, Maria, and Tom would stay with her, shaping her understanding and driving her quest for knowledge. As they departed the rehabilitation center, the students were quieter, their minds filled with the stories and faces of the veterans they had met. The experience had left an indelible mark on them, deepening their appreciation for the resilience and complexity of humanity. For Vala, it was another step in her journey to uncover the deeper truths of human nature, a journey that had only just begun. The following morning, the Xerian students found themselves navigating the secure corridors of a high-tech government facility. They had been granted access to classified military archives, a rare privilege extended by the human authorities in recognition of their academic mission. Dr. Hawkins and Professor Zellara accompanied them, guiding the students through a labyrinth of security checkpoints and into a vast, dimly lit archive room filled with rows of ancient and modern documents. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and the hum of electronic scanners. The students, their large eyes wide with anticipation, moved cautiously among the shelves, each one housing secrets of humanity's complex history of conflict. Vala, her curiosity piqued more than ever, felt a thrill of excitement as she approached a terminal set up for their use. Dr. Hawkins introduced the students to the digital archive system, explaining how to navigate the vast repository of documents. These archives contain strategic plans, intelligence reports, and personal accounts from every major conflict in human history, he said. Use this opportunity to delve deeper into the minds of those who shaped these events. Vala quickly immersed herself in the search, her fingers dancing over the keyboard as she sifted through files. She was particularly interested in the lesser-known aspects of warfare, covert operations, and the intelligence efforts that often played a crucial role behind the scenes. Her search soon led her to a series of declassified documents from World War II, detailing a covert operation known as Operation Trident. As she began to read, Vala was drawn into a world of espionage and intrigue. Operation Trident, she discovered, had been a daring mission involving a group of elite soldiers and spies tasked with sabotaging key enemy infrastructure. The documents included mission plans, coded messages, and reports from the field, each piece adding to the puzzle of this clandestine operation. Her heart raced as she uncovered more details. The mission had required not only physical bravery, but also exceptional cunning and resourcefulness. The soldiers and spies had used a combination of deception, disguise, and strategic sabotage to achieve their objectives, often operating deep behind enemy lines. Vala was particularly struck by the ingenuity and adaptability displayed by these operatives. She shared her findings with her peers, who gathered around the terminal, their eyes wide with fascination. They discussed the ethical implications of such covert operations, debating the fine line between strategic necessity and moral ambiguity. Professor Zilara encouraged them to consider these questions deeply, emphasizing the importance of understanding the full spectrum of human behavior in war. Intrigued by the human capacity for both brilliance and brutality, Vala continued her research, uncovering personal accounts from the operatives involved in Operation Trident. One diary in particular stood out to her. It belonged to a young intelligence officer named Eleanor, who had played a key role in planning and executing the operation. Her entries were filled with a mixture of fear, determination, and a profound sense of duty. Eleanor wrote about the challenges she faced, from the constant threat of discovery to the moral dilemmas that came with her work. She recounted tense moments of near capture, the sorrow of losing comrades, and the exhilaration of successful missions. Her words painted a vivid picture of the human side of espionage, highlighting the personal sacrifices and ethical complexities involved. Vala felt a deep connection to Eleanor's story. It resonated with her own quest for knowledge and understanding. She realized that the study of warfare was not just about tactics and strategies, but also about the individuals who lived through these events, their fears, their hopes, and their moral struggles. The other students also found themselves drawn into the archives, each discovering different facets of human warfare. Some delved into the psychological operations used to demoralize the enemy, while others explored the development and deployment of advanced technologies. Each discovery added another layer to their understanding of the intricacies of human conflict. As the day drew to a close, the students gathered to share their findings. The discussions were lively and thought-provoking, filled with insights and ethical debates. They had uncovered a wealth of information that went beyond the surface of historical events, delving into the minds and hearts of those who had shaped history. Professor Zilara praised their efforts, encouraging them to continue exploring these themes. "You have all done remarkable work today," she said. "Remember, the study of history is not just about facts and dates. It's about understanding the human experience, the courage, the ingenuity, and the ethical challenges that define us." Vala, reflecting on her day's discoveries, felt a deep sense of satisfaction and a renewed determination to continue her studies. She had uncovered not just the strategic brilliance of Operation Trident, but also the personal stories that brought it to life. These stories, filled with bravery and moral complexity, had deepened her understanding of humanity's capacity for both greatness and fallibility. As they left the archive, the students were filled with a sense of purpose. They had come closer to understanding the multifaceted nature of human warfare, not just as a series of historical events, but as a profound human experience. For Vala, the journey was far from over. There were still many secrets to uncover, many stories to tell, and many lessons to learn about the enduring spirit of humanity. The morning sun cast long shadows across the campus as the Zyrian students gathered in a sleek modern lecture hall. Today's session was different from their previous experiences. It was time for them to confront the ethical dilemmas they had uncovered during their studies. The room buzzed with anticipation, the students' expressive eyes reflecting their eagerness to delve into this complex and often uncomfortable topic. Professor Zilara stood at the front of the room, her calm demeanor and thoughtful gaze setting the tone for the day. "Today, we will explore the ethical dimensions of human warfare," she began. "We have learned about the strategies, the technologies, and the personal stories. Now it is time to reflect on the moral questions that arise from these conflicts." The students nodded, their minds already racing with thoughts and questions. Vala, seated near the front, felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. She had been deeply affected by the stories and documents they had studied, and she was eager to explore the moral complexities that underpinned them. Dr. Hawkins joined Professor Zilara, bringing with him a wealth of historical and philosophical knowledge. Ethics in warfare is a topic that has challenged humanity for centuries, he said. From the rules of engagement to the treatment of prisoners, every aspect of war raises questions about right and wrong, justice and injustice. The session began with a discussion on the just war theory, a philosophical framework that seeks to determine under what conditions war can be morally justified. The students listened intently as Dr. Hawkins explained the principles of jus ad bellum, the right to go to war, and jus in bello, the right conduct in war. These concepts provided a foundation for understanding the ethical challenges faced by those who wage war. Vala found herself deeply engaged in the discussion. She had always been curious about the moral reasoning behind human actions, and the just war theory offered a structured way to think about these issues. She raised her hand and asked, "How do soldiers reconcile their duty to follow orders with their personal moral beliefs, especially when those orders may be ethically questionable?" Dr. Hawkins nodded, acknowledging the complexity of her question. "That is indeed one of the most challenging aspects of military service," he replied. "Soldiers are trained to obey commands, but they also face situations where their personal ethics come into conflict with their duties. This is why the concept of moral injury, psychological harm resulting from actions that transgress deeply held moral beliefs, has become an important area of study." The discussion then shifted to the ethical implications of specific wartime practices. The use of drones and autonomous weapons, for example, raised questions about the distance between the decision-maker and the battlefield. The students debated the morality of using technology that could reduce human casualties on one side, while potentially increasing the risk of collateral damage. Vala's thoughts turned to Operation Trident, the covert mission she had studied in the archives. She shared her findings with the class, detailing the ingenious strategies and the moral dilemmas faced by the operatives. They had to make decisions that balanced the mission's objectives with the potential harm to innocent lives, she said. How can we judge their actions when they were operating under such extreme conditions? The room fell silent as the students pondered her question. Professor Zilara used this moment to emphasize the importance of empathy and context in ethical judgment. We must strive to understand the circumstances and pressures faced by individuals in these situations, she said. Ethical judgment is rarely black and white. It requires us to consider multiple perspectives and the broader context. The debate continued with a focus on the treatment of prisoners of war and the ethical considerations of intelligence gathering. The students explored the balance between national security and human rights, discussing historical examples and current practices. They were particularly intrigued by the ethical guidelines established by international conventions, such as the Geneva Conventions, which aimed to protect those caught in the crossfire of conflict. As the day progressed, the students broke into smaller groups for focused discussions. Vala's group included some of her closest peers, and together they tackled the ethical implications of propaganda and psychological operations. They examined how information could be used to influence public opinion and enemy morale, questioning the fine line between strategic communication and manipulation. Vala found herself increasingly drawn to the ethical dimensions of warfare, realizing that these questions were not merely academic, but deeply personal and impactful. The discussions were intense and sometimes heated, but they were also enlightening. Each student brought a unique perspective, enriching the conversation and challenging each other's assumptions. By the end of the session, the students reconvened to share their insights. Vala felt a profound sense of intellectual and emotional growth. She had come to understand that ethics in warfare was a complex, multifaceted issue that required careful consideration and empathy. The day's discussions had deepened her understanding of humanity, highlighting both its capacity for moral reasoning and the challenges it faced in applying those principles in the heat of conflict. Professor Zilara and Dr. Hawkins concluded the session by encouraging the students to continue their ethical explorations. "The study of ethics is an ongoing journey," Professor Zilara said. "It requires constant reflection and a willingness to confront difficult questions. You have all shown great insight and maturity today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and strive to understand the deeper truths of the human experience. As they left the lecture hall, Vala felt a renewed sense of purpose. The ethical dilemmas they had discussed were not just academic exercises. They were real issues that shaped the course of history and the lives of countless individuals. She knew that their journey was far from over, and there were many more questions to explore. With a determined heart and an inquisitive mind, Vala looked forward to the challenges and discoveries that lay ahead. The final days of their visit to Earth found the Zirian students back at their temporary quarters, a sleek and modern complex provided by their human hosts. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the city as the students gathered for their last reflection session. The experiences of the past weeks had left a deep impression on each of them, and tonight was an opportunity to share their thoughts and insights. The room was filled with a quiet anticipation. The students sat in a circle, their faces illuminated by the soft lighting. Professor Zellara and Dr. Hawkins sat among them, ready to facilitate the discussion. Vala, seated beside her closest peers, felt a mix of emotions: gratitude, curiosity, and a sense of impending departure. Professor Zellara began the session with a warm smile. "You have all come a long way since we first arrived," she said. "We have explored many facets of human warfare, from its strategic brilliance to its ethical complexities. Tonight I want you to reflect on what you have learned and how it has impacted you." Vala was the first to speak. She took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "This journey has been transformative," she began. "When we first arrived, I was curious about human warfare as a historical phenomenon, but now I see it as a deeply human experience, filled with both darkness and light. Meeting the veterans, experiencing the simulations, and exploring the ethical dilemmas have given me a profound respect for the resilience and complexity of humanity." Her words resonated with her peers. One by one, the students shared their reflections. Lyra, a soft-spoken but insightful student, spoke about the emotional impact of the war simulation. "Feeling the fear and chaos of battle, even in a controlled environment, made me realize the immense psychological toll on soldiers," she said. "It's one thing to read about it, but another to experience it, even virtually." Rax, who had been particularly engaged during their visit to the Veterans Center, added, "Hearing the stories of those who lived through war gave me a new perspective. Their courage and vulnerability were inspiring. It made me think about how we can support those who bear the scars of conflict, both physically and emotionally." The discussion flowed naturally, each student building on the insights of the others. They talked about the strategic ingenuity they had admired, the moral dilemmas that had challenged their thinking, and the personal stories that had touched their hearts. The conversation was rich and multifaceted, reflecting the diverse experiences and perspectives they had gained. Professor Zellara and Dr. Hawkins listened with pride, occasionally guiding the discussion with thoughtful questions. "What have you learned about the nature of conflict?" Dr. Hawkins asked at one point. Vala pondered the question before responding. "Conflict seems to be an inherent part of the human condition," she said. "It arises from competition, fear, and the desire for power, but it also brings out qualities like bravery, ingenuity, and resilience. Understanding this duality has been one of the most important lessons for me." The discussion continued late into the evening, covering topics such as the impact of technological advancements on warfare, the role of propaganda, and the importance of ethical leadership. The students expressed their admiration for the ways humans had sought to mitigate the horrors of war through rules and conventions, even as they grappled with the reality that these rules were often broken. As the session drew to a close, Professor Zellara addressed the group with a tone of deep respect. "You have all grown immensely during this journey. Your insights and reflections show a maturity and depth of understanding that will serve you well in your future studies. Remember that the study of history is not just about learning facts, but about understanding the human experience in all its complexity." Dr. Hawkins added, "You have had the unique opportunity to see humanity from an outsider's perspective, and your observations are invaluable. As you return to Zyria, I hope you will carry these lessons with you and continue to seek understanding and empathy in all your endeavors." The students thanked their mentors, their gratitude evident in their expressions. Vala felt a deep sense of connection to her peers and teachers, united by the shared journey they had undertaken. She knew that the experiences and knowledge they had gained would shape their perspectives and actions for years to come. Later, as they prepared for their departure, Vala stood by the window, gazing out at the cityscape below. The lights of Washington, D.C. twinkled in the darkness, a symbol of the complex and vibrant world she had come to know. She thought about the people she had met, the stories she had heard, and the lessons she had learned. There was a sense of closure, but also a recognition that this was just the beginning of a lifelong quest for understanding. As the Lumina ascended into space, carrying the Zirian students back to their home planet, Vala looked back at Earth, feeling a mix of nostalgia and hope. She knew that the journey had changed her in profound ways, and she was eager to apply the knowledge and insights she had gained. With a heart full of gratitude and a mind brimming with questions, Vala embraced the future, ready to continue exploring the mysteries of the human spirit and the broader universe. The lessons of Earth, both harsh and enlightening, had prepared her for the challenges ahead, and as the stars stretched out before her, she felt a renewed sense of purpose, driven by the desire to understand, connect, and contribute to a more peaceful and enlightened galaxy.